All right, so Kamala Harris sat down with Brett Baer from Fox News and gave an interview. Now, if you are coming from the left, this is what I've been seeing on social media all day. Kamala Harris killed it. She was fabulous. She slayed. And of course, on the right, what do I see all across social media and all of the pundits? They're saying, oh my gosh, she's cooked. This ended her. This is the worst performance ever. How could anybody vote for Kamala Harris? All right, I'm going to give you guys an unpopular opinion. Warning, unpopular opinion. I actually think Brett Baer did a horrible job in this interview, and I'll tell you why. He constantly interrupted Kamala Harris. Now, before you jump down my throat and say, but Kim, she doesn't answer any questions. Yeah, I know. She doesn't answer any questions. That's actually my point. The point is she doesn't answer questions. So if Brett Baer would have just stopped interrupting her and allowed her to not answer the questions, give her the room to not answer the questions and hang herself. Give her enough rope to hang herself. And he didn't give her any of that rope. He kept choking her and cutting her off. And that ultimately gave, I think, fuel to the fire for the left and even independents who are watching, who are not at all biased from one side or the other. It's easy if you're coming from the left to think she killed it. She did not kill it in this interview. It's also easy to come from the right and say, she's dead. She's dead in the water. That didn't really happen either. From a totally independent perspective, a lot of independents will say, yeah, I wasn't that really into her in this interview. But the other half of the independents are going to say, Brett Baer, this was a hostile interview, and this guy just came at her and would not allow her to answer a question. And I want to hear her answer questions. My point is she doesn't answer questions. So let her not answer the questions. That's when she's at her worst. Kamala Harris is at her worst and showcasing the fact she doesn't have a single policy idea when she's given the room to talk. Because when she talks, she says nothing. So Brett Baer constantly interrupting her now there's an excuse, is my point. There's an excuse. The viewer can look and say, well, how do I know she was going to say nothing? Well, somebody next to the viewer, the independent viewer, will say, she would have said nothing. How do you just let her answer? She would have said nothing. The independent viewer says, how do I know? He didn't let her answer. We're going to go ahead and start off and watch some of the interview so that you can see what I'm saying. This is the first 5 minutes of the interview. They spent half of the interview talking about immigration, which is the number one topic on people's minds, I think, right now, besides war or the economy. Immigration's a big one. They spend most of the time talking about it. I'm going to play the first 5 minutes of what is probably about 10 minutes of this particular conversation. Okay. Watch this.
Vice President, thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Brett.
You know, voters tell pollsters all over the country and here in Pennsylvania that immigration is one of the key issues that they're looking at this election, and specifically the influx of illegal immigrants from more than 150 countries. How many illegal immigrants would you estimate your administration has released into the country over the last 3.5 years?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Brett, let's just get to the point. Okay, the point is that we have a broken immigration system that needs to be repaired.
So your Homeland Security Secretary said that 85% of apprehensions.
Okay, so she's trying to talk about immigrant. He's trying to get her immediately on a gotcha question. How many people, illegal immigrants, would you estimate? I have a transcript. I actually transcribed this interview so I could read it to really it's better sometimes to just read the text and to see what the interaction actually is. You don't have the tone, you don't have the interruptions necessarily as much in the transcript. She was, when you read the transcript, actually trying to answer maybe, but here, this is my point. My point is, one could say, well, she was trying to answer the question, but he wouldn't let her. He then cut her off and he just kept sticking her with how many, what's the number? How many illegal immigrants are now being released into the United States from your administration, rather than talking about the bigger issue that Americans want to talk about, which is immigration as a whole, rather than just doing this, you guys suck kind of angle of you guys let in all these illegal immigrants into the country. She was actually trying to answer that question, but she wouldn't have answered the question. And that's my point. My point is, had he just let her not answer the question, then any normal viewer would have been like, well, she didn't answer that question. The problem is that she actually was going off into a part of the immigration debate that I actually think was warranted. Now this is a really unpopular opinion. I think her answer to this question was the best answer I've seen her give in any interview about any topic, because she actually finally addressed some issues somewhat, because she never ever gives an answer on anything. And this time she actually kind of answered the question, and she just basically said, we have a problem with immigration. And I'm going to let her answer the question. And I'll tell you why I think it wasn't such a bad answer. But maybe that's why Brett decided, oh God, I got to start cutting her off right away, because she's actually giving, a somewhat decent answer for the first time ever in any of her interviews. And maybe he wasn't quite prepared for that, because she usually doesn't say anything.
I'm not finished. We have
it's a
an
rough
immigration
estimate of
system
6 million people.
So then he's answering the question. That's not the job of the interviewer. So now he's operating as a fact checker. This is what we criticized ABC for doing. For those, they've done this to Vance, they've done this to Trump, and now Bret Baier's doing this to Harris. Now you might think, finally somebody's doing it to her. And I agree. Finally, somebody is. I mean, they do it to Trump all the time. So why not also do it to Kamala Harris? Fair enough. I just don't think it's, just because the other side does it I don't think it's a good strategy to then say, all right, well, then we're just going to stoop down to their level. It's better to be above that. But then again, I don't know. Politics is a dirty game. Maybe it's just a fist fight.
Been released into the country. And let me just finish. I'll get to the question. I promise you.
I was beginning to answer.
And when you came into office, your administration immediately reversed a number of Trump border policies. Most significantly, the policy that required illegal immigrants to be detained through deportation, either in the U.S. or in Mexico. And you switched that policy. They were released from custody awaiting trial. So instead, included in those were a large number of single men, adult men, who went on to commit heinous crimes. So, looking back, do you regret the decision to terminate Remain in Mexico at the beginning of your administration?
At the beginning of our administration, within practically hours of taking the oath, the first bill that we offered Congress, before we worked on infrastructure, before the Inflation Reduction Act, before the CHIPS and Science Act, before the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the... Yes, ma'am.
May I finish responding, please? But you have to let me finish,
You
please.
had the White House and the House and the Senate,
and they didn't bring up that bill. I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
We recognized from day one that, to the point of this being your first question, it is a priority for us.
Okay, so I think a lot of us did not know that the administration brought forward an immigration bill at the very first bill that they ever brought forward. Now, Brett is saying, but you guys never even really, you proposed it, but it never actually made it to the House floor. This is one of the biggest problems, is this idea that government is run, like the president is, it's the lack of civics knowledge, I think, in the country in this. But they do it on purpose. I don't think that this is actually a lack of knowledge. I actually think that this is on purpose to gaslight us, the American people, into believing that the president is in charge of Congress. Like the president has all this power. The president can put forward this bill, and then Brett, his response to that is, yeah, but they didn't bring it to the floor. Okay, they're separate branches of government. So they're blaming the president. They do this on both sides. And this is by design. It's because Congress doesn't actually want to do their job. Congress doesn't want to do their job, so they want you to understand, they want you to believe that they're just doing what the president wants them to do. Or, they push it on the other branch. They say, well, the president doesn't want us to bring this bill forward. It's all bull. I mean, they are a separate branch of government. So the president could say to Congress, I want you to put this bill forward, and Congress could completely ignore them because Congress is an equally powerful branch of government. But they try to get us to forget this. And immigration is actually the responsibility of Congress. They keep trying to push this on the president. This is solely the responsibility of Congress. And they have failed for many decades. This is not something that's on the Biden administration or the Trump administration or the Obama administration or the Clinton administration. This has been going on for a long time. Congress has dragged their feet. It's just like the fact that Congress never declares war and they don't ever hold anybody's feet to the fire about declaration of war. It is solely their responsibility to declare war, but they never do it. Instead, they allow the executive office to use these various different executive orders and workarounds. And then that way they can shove off the blame and they can act like the president is the leader and they're just following along. And it's not true. They're an equal branch of government. They can override the presidency anytime they want, but they don't, because they like to just run for office, take all their money from their donors, not actually get anything done, and gaslight the American people into believing, oh, it's this guy's fault or that guy's fault or that group. It's all a game. It's a game. This is how they keep us gaslit. So she's bringing up the fact that they brought forward this bill. He then says, yeah, but they never brought it to the floor and you guys had control over everything. No, they didn't. To say you guys had control of everything, pointing at the Biden administration, no, they don't have, no, that's not how it works. Congress is separate. Congress is in control of Congress. Is it true that Democrats are running, they had the office of the president? They also had one Congress, the majority of Congress? Yes, that's true. So blame it on the Democratic Party. But there's more people responsible than just the president. You can't just say, well, you guys as in Democrat, but not you guys as in the administration. And I believe this is purposeful. I believe this is purposeful gaslighting because they know that there's many people born today who were not alive during the Nixon administration and earlier than that. And so a lot of people don't remember because they just weren't around. They weren't alive to remember that there was a lot of infighting inside of parties for a long time. During the reason why we have government shutdowns, for example, we have government shutdowns because back under the Nixon administration, Democrats couldn't agree with other Democrats. And so they would fight it out with each other over abortion, usually. And they would shut down the government, even though they had a supermajority, because they couldn't get along with each other. A lot of people who are alive today, the boomers in particular, remember a time when there was a lot of party infighting. And a lot of them, they didn't get along with the president. There's coups of their own party. I mean, Nixon was couped by his own people. So there's but they've got us all gaslit, is my point, into being like, oh yeah, no, the president's in charge. And look at his little lackeys in Congress didn't do what he said. That's not the way it works. It's a totally separate branch of government. All right, we'll keep going.
And for the American people. And our focus has been on fixing a problem. And from day one, then, we have done a number of things, including to address our asylum system and put more resources, getting more judges, what we needed to do to tighten up penalties and increase penalties for illegal crossings, what we needed to do to deal with points of entry between border entry points. That's the work we did, and we worked on supporting what was a bipartisan effort, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Congress, to actually strengthen the border. That border bill would have put 1,500 more border agents at the border, which is why I believe the Border Patrol agents supported the bill. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States, which is a scourge affecting people of every background, every geographic location in our country, killing people. It would have allowed us to put more resources into prosecuting transnational criminal organizations, which I have done as the Attorney General, former Attorney General of a border state.
Madam Vice President, a couple of things.
Prosecuted trafficking of drugs, guns, and human beings. And Donald Trump, but let me just finish.
Six Democrats voted against that bill.
Learned about that bill and told them to kill it because he preferred to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And in this election, this is rightly a discussion that the American people want to have. And what they want are solutions, and they want a president of the United States who's not playing political games with the issue,
I hear you,
but actually is focused on fixing it.
Six Democrats.
And that's true. I mean, she's absolutely right on that. And I think a lot of independent voters know that Trump is making this a political issue, that Republicans in general are making this a political issue. No different than, and this would have been the honest answer had she been honest in her answer, no different than how Democrats made it a political issue back in 2020 when they took over, right? I mean, that's what they were. Oh, kids in cages. Trump is inhumane. He's treating these people like animals, right? They turned the real answer, the right answer. Why? What were you guys doing? You guys basically changed the rules and allowed a flood of immigrants into the country. Do you regret that? The answer should have been, yeah, I regret it. But she can't really say that. I mean, they never can say, yes, we made a mistake. Yes, we regret this. I wonder how well that would play out with the American people if a politician actually just admitted to a mistake. They think in their political calculations that that would be worse, that people would take that clip and they would run with it over and over and say, see, you're not fit. You already admitted to failing. So why would we allow you to stay back in? And they might be right on that. Or it could go another way and the American public could say, finally, somebody who actually admits to being wrong. What she could have said, to try to soften it is, well, look, we were in a different landscape then. Things were different. In 2020, we had record low crossings at that time because of COVID. So, they could say, well, we didn't have a major immigration crisis when we took over in 2020. We had record low immigration at that point. Things have changed. The reality on the ground has changed. Now here we are, and we're seeing record immigration come in. Probably a lot of this had to do with COVID, but can Democrats say that? Because it was mainly their policies that caused all the shutdowns. So she could say, now we're seeing a big flood in, and now we've had to change. We've had to change our way of going about things. I mean, things change. That's how it is when you're managing a country. From one, you can't have a dogma about how something should be. You got to go from one thing to the next, depending on how the situation constantly changes. She could have said that. The reality of it is Democrats, they treated the immigration issue politically. They use it as a political point in order to get elected. Now Trump is doing the same thing. Two cheeks of the same ass, guys. It's always that way. But I actually thought her answer this is the best answer I've ever seen her give in any interview whatsoever. And maybe Bret Baier was like, oh, we can't have any more of that. I also think that he was rushing through and interrupting her a lot because the interview was cut quite short. He only had a certain amount of time, but it was still very frustrating. And I think him interrupting her all the time caused, again, that illusion of an independent voter. It doesn't matter what you think as somebody who's staunchly already against Kamala Harris, or what you think if you're staunchly for Kamala Harris. They already calculated you into the math of who's going to win the election. They need to get those independents who are undecided right now. And I think to an undecided voter, a lot of them watched this interview and thought, I wish Bret Baier would have just let her answer. But I do think this was her better answer, where she says, look, we've got a problem and we are trying to fix this. We need to fix this problem. We need to have actual solutions. And these are the things that we're trying to do. And we put forward a bill that would put a lot more agents, and they won't put that on the floor. They won't actually vote on that. And that's what Republicans now have control of the House. So, they play politics with us. Nobody ever intends to change the immigration issue, by the way. Businesses love the illegal immigration into the United States to get cheap labor. They don't have any intention of changing it. And that's why it continues to be this political football that just gets passed around back and forth and no actual change happens. Okay. I want to get to this one where Bret starts talking to Kamala about the enemy from this was a clip that so he's trying to fact check her in real time on this. And he plays a clip of Donald Trump. She says, Trump has the negative rhetoric. He kind of is asking her, do you think the American people are stupid? And she says, I would never say that. I don't talk bad about the American people. That's Trump. Trump does it. And then Bret Baier says, well, oh, really? We have a clip. He's basically saying he doesn't do that. And he plays a clip. Now, this is an important part of the interview because, again, the goal is, if you're Fox News and if you're against Kamala Harris, it's to get voters to not want to vote for her. This doesn't help when you lie. And Bret Baier actually lied. And I'm going to show you how he lied. Watch this.
Are they misguided, the 50%?
Listen,
are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Bret, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you.
Oh, Brett Baer, actually, we got the fact check right here. If we're going to be doing some fact checking. All right, let's go ahead and play what Trump actually said. And it turns out, guys, Kamala Harris, she's right. She fact checked Brett Baer. He tried to fact check her. She fact checked him back. She was actually the one right on this. I know, it's a surprise. Democrats are usually not, but this time she was. Watch this.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
Kamala Harris has said you sounded unhinged and unchecked power is in our future. What do you say about that?
I thought it was a nice presentation. I wasn't unhinged. You know what they are? They're a party of sound bites. Somebody asked me, can they be brought together? You know, I never thought, really, I wasn't thinking like they could, because they're very, very different. And it is the enemy from within, and they're very dangerous. They're Marxists and communists and fascists, and they're sick. I use a guy like Adam Schiff because they made up the Russia hoax. It took 2 years to solve the problem. Absolutely nothing was done wrong, et cetera, et cetera. They're dangerous for our country. We have China, we have Russia, we have all these countries. If you have a smart president, they can all be handled. The more difficult are, the Pelosi's, these people, they're so sick and they're so evil. If they would spend their time trying to make America great again, it would be so easy to make this country great. But when I heard about that, they were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. No, but think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
All right.
Okay, so they cut off about 1 minute and 30 seconds of that, from the question to the answer. The full answer was 1 minute 46, and of everything you just saw. And we only saw Brett Baer play. He says, oh no, we asked him this question and this was his answer. Literally only played that last 10 seconds when he says, oh, I've been investigated like Al Capone. Look at this. No, he answered saying the enemy from within. Now, Kamala knew that. She fact-checked Brett Baer, but this wasn't the only time that Trump had said this. And in fact, Trump has said something even more alarming, and that is he's actually said that we should maybe, and Kamala brought this up, going after the American people, even using the military to do so. Watch this.
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
What? Are you hearing this? Oh, come on, guys. Now I know I'm going to get a lot of hate. I'm going to get a lot of hate for this because so many of you right now want to believe that Donald Trump is different. I've wanted to believe this too. I've been wanting to believe that finally, just like I wanted to believe this under Bernie Sanders, I wanted to believe that Bernie Sanders was going to finally break the duopoly, break us free from the establishment, do something good, bring, politics back to the American people. That didn't happen. You know what he did? He just caved and fell right in line. He just fell right back in line with the duopoly and just started being a mouthpiece for the Democrats. I've had that same hope for Donald Trump. I've really hoped Donald Trump is finally going to be the guy. Look at how much they've gone after this guy. They've gone after him full force. They've done everything they possibly can. The establishment has done everything they possibly can to get rid of Donald Trump and to go after him. You would think that the guy would be the most anti-establishment, totally adverse to using the state in this way to go after people. You think he would be the one of all the people, you think he would be the guy that would never even utter, yeah, we got to use the military to go after these people, because that's what they were doing to him. So you think that he would be the one guy that would say, no way, it's us against them. It's us against the elites. It's us against the establishment. These are the types of tools they use in order to turn on us. We're not going to do that. I'm not going to do that towards anybody. But instead, it's just become right and left all again. He just moved into the camp of the right. And I'll tell you, I have a theory on that. And the reason, the theory I think is when Trump was in office in 2016, the establishment went fully after him. He kept surrounding himself, though, with establishment people, John Bolton, Michael Pompeo. These are some of the worst of the worst of the worst, as establishmenty as they get, especially Mike Pompeo. But he still surrounded himself with these people. But I thought, well, maybe he's just naive. I gave him the benefit of the doubt over and over and thought, well, maybe he feels like he has to or else, they're going to get him. They're going to off him like they did some other previous presidents or do something. But there were a lot of things he didn't do that he should have done. I mean, he didn't fully end the wars. He certainly didn't start any, so that's better than what the other guys have done for sure. But he didn't, what did he do for Assange? Mike Pompeo went after him, tried to kill the guy. What did he do for Edward Snowden? Nothing. I mean, what did he do for the CIA? Just grew stronger and more emboldened. And he was looking out for himself, and I understand he kind of had to. I mean, the establishment tried to get him. They tried to infiltrate him. They tried to change his mind. They undercut him every chance they could while he was in office. And I think they figured him out finally. I think what they figured out, because this is what they're good at, they figure out your weak spot and they come after you. So they figured, okay, this guy cares about himself and his family, self-preservation. He'll fight. He'll say all of these kind of wild things. But if we focus him back on himself, then he'll stop being a threat to all of us. This is the establishment talking. He'll stop being a threat to all of us because he's so focused on himself. So we just had to keep him focused on himself. So what we do know now is that members of his own party turned on him, and they even aided in the impeachment processes twice over, and they threatened him. And one of the threats, some of the threats that they gave was, don't you even dare think about pardoning Assange. Otherwise, we're not going to vote for you on your side in the impeachment. So they put him in a position where he had to choose self-preservation or continue fighting for the country. But how good, and somebody has to do a calculation on that. And the person would think, how good am I at fighting for the country if I'm dead or if I'm taken out completely? If they wipe me out somehow, they rid me from office, like how good am I going to be? And you have to constantly make that calculation in your mind. It's sort of like the oxygen mask. How good are you for your children next to you if you don't have your oxygen mask on and then you pass out? You're not any good. So I understand the logic of, well, I got to preserve myself because how can I fight if I'm not around? But then they figured that out and they said, oh, okay, well, we'll just keep him occupied with fighting lawsuits. We'll keep him. And don't think it was just the Democrats that went after him for those lawsuits. No. The deep state went after him, and that's both sides. They're on both sides of the aisle. They work together. They collude. They're best friends. They act like, oh, Nancy Pelosi's the devil. No, they're all shaking hands behind closed doors. They're partying together. They're making a bunch of money together. They're doing it together. So they're behind the closed doors and they're thinking, well, we'll just keep him occupied with lawsuits. We'll keep him occupied. We'll threaten his kids with lawsuits. That'll really scare him. We'll do all of these things. They figured out how to get him to fall in line. And that's how they got him to fall in line. So now he's talking in a very similar rhetoric that I would expect from a really staunch, if Lindsey Graham were running for president, I expect these types of words from him. Mitch McConnell, if he could form words anymore. This is the type of stuff I would expect from him. This is not the kind of stuff I expect from the anti-establishment candidate who then goes and says, yeah, I'm going to sick the military on the American people because they have different viewpoints than me. I mean, that's pretty frightening, guys. And that leaves me feeling honestly quite hopeless about the entire situation. I mean, I had a lot of hope in Bernie Sanders at one point. I had a lot of hope in Donald Trump at this other point. And then it was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I had hope in him. And then he joined, and it shows and says that he's stands with Israel above and, basically above all else, practically. I mean, waving the flag for another country. These are what do we do? Where do we go? I don't know. And then you got Trump now saying he's going to sick the military on the American people. Are you kidding me? This is the kind of stuff we didn't like about January 6th. I don't like it done to either side. I don't care which side it is. I don't want the American people under attack for having an opinion you don't like. Say, oh no, but these people are dangerous. And that's what they always say. No, but Kim, this time it's different. I heard that from the left. I heard that all through COVID. Spare me this time it's different. Lives are on the line. This time people are going to die. I heard it before. I heard it from them. I've heard it from the other side. I just keep hearing it. Round and round we go, and we never make any progress. And that's where we're at with that. So, um, anyway, back to the interview. Kamala Harris look, the way she fails is when she's allowed to talk. Brett Baer really should have just asked her one question, let her ramble on for that one question for 30 minutes. And then he'd say, well, it looks like we're out of time because this is all they would give me. And then that be it. And people could ridicule Kamala for fumbling over. It's like, do you interrupt Joe Biden or do you just let Joe Biden talk and fumble all over himself? You let him talk and you let him fumble all over himself. That's what got him basically taken out to pasture. So that's what you do. That's the same strategy with Kamala Harris. And Brett Baer apparently didn't get that memo and decided to interrupt her and then give a lot of independent voters the reason to think, well, but she wasn't allowed to answer a question because Brett kept interrupting. Now, I showed you segments where he wasn't interrupting as much, but other times he really was. It was a very frustrating interview to watch for that reason. But anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts. I know you guys will give them to me. Kim at KimIverson.com or comment down below. Many of you disagree with me, but I still want to hear from you. We can disagree. We often do, but that's okay. That's okay here on this show. We're not looking to be in a bubble, agreeing with each other all the time. We're here to have discussions and to exchange thoughts and ideas and opinions. And that's how it should be in America, right? We should be able to do that. We should be able to have different thoughts and opinions and disagree with each other and not call each other not Americans. And, like you deserve to have the military coming after you because you have a different opinion than me. So email me your different opinions, Kim at KimIverson.com, or comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. This was just a clip from the longer, larger show that you can catch Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. That'll route you to the platform where you need to be in order to get the full uncensored show every Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Click on that link, watch the full interview. See you there.